we're still in a pandemic, no matter what people say, endemic, whatever it is.
Endemic.
It's endemic.
Endemic.
People are still dying from it. People are still getting it. But I think that folks have started to sort of move on.
Well, learning how to live with it.
That's it. We're learning how to live with it. It's not a perfect solution for everyone, but it's not supposed to be.
Right.
Nothing ever is for everyone.
Nothing ever is. And with our budget this year, I mean, we went up 34 cents. Look at all the other municipalities around you and what other towns are doing. We went up 34 cents. We used some of the reserves. We've been putting money aside every year. And it goes back to that budget when I was still a city councilor, and I spoke about it, and I talked to you about it. We went up that 0.49 cents. And I got hammered on that. And I said, if we do this, we're going to be at zero next year because it would have given us enough reserves to keep covering.
Right.
And I was wrong. Not only did it give us enough money to be zero that year, we were zero the next year. We gave back 26 cents last year, so we asked for some of it. So in the last 4 years, you've had a net increase of 9 cents. Look at all of the things that we have done in this city.
Right.
And we have increased taxes on our residents by 9 cents over the course of 3 years.
Wow.
That's not bad, but now coming into the following year.
Next year, everyone's getting hammered. Listen, there is nothing that we can do.
So if there's nothing we can do, how do we mitigate how do we cushion this blow of how do we mitigate it from being astronomically huge? How do we make it so that we keep it under control?
Well, you have to have, first it starts with your services. What do you need? What can't you live without? And what should you have in place? Your fire departments, your police departments, those are needs. I mean, you got to have that.
Your city, your service center, your hub.
You're going to have public works. I know that we pay taxes. Sometimes our roads look rougher than they should. But in our parks and recs, like defense, those roads don't all belong to us. A lot of them belong to the state. And they're just not taking care of them. And I'm sure we'll talk more about the state and state issues later. But Waterville is poised to be a leader in this region. We are a service center community. And
I know you've done a pretty good job at figuring out how to leverage the outside funding that comes into this service center.
Absolutely. Like our budget, like we've had those ARPA funds for a couple of years. We used some of them this year to like do the mental health officer, the lieutenant's position that will also help and aid in the paperwork that has to be done.
So the mental health officer is being repurposed by the ARPA funds?
Yes. Because that's what the money was for.
Good.
ARPA funds are meant to
it's important people know that.
ARPA funds are meant to take care of the people that are the most vulnerable in our community.
Yep.
That's what it was for.
Waterville still has a resource officer, don't we?
Nope.
No, I was going to say we don't. Now
that's not our doing. Nobody.
No, I know that was
we would give
federal,
we would give the schools a resource officer if they wanted one.
Okay.
We'd figure it out. There's nobody that. It's weird when we talk about funding things. We talk about making sure that we have enough money. Everybody's always worried about what's going to happen with people before they're born. Once they're born, it's like we don't give a shit. People don't want welfare. They don't want this. They don't want that. They don't want to fund these services. They don't want to fund those.
Because that's one service I'd like to see back.
What
is the resource officer in the schools?
Well, again, that comes to schools. You look at other states and what has happened in their schools. Luckily, knock on some wood, I'm not really all that superstitious, but we don't have those issues. We are one of the safest states in the country.
Constantly first and second, battling back and forth between here and Vermont.
I think this year may change it a little. Vermont may take us this year because we have crept up a little bit. But it is what it is.
Vermont's got Bernie and good cheese. Right. I mean, that's pretty...
And concealed carry.
Isn't that where Burlington Coat Factory came from, too? Like Burlington, Vermont? I have no idea.
I don't know.
You might be right. I think you are.
I think you are. I'm just making... I know they're up in I'm just making that...
Sounded good anyway.
I'm making that fact up. I mean,
it sounded good.
Most facts are made up anyway.
So, Yeah, go ahead. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, you just made me do the same thing, but
So I also heard that you guys are raising the teachers' pay.
Yes, listen, we have been so low, like bottom of the barrel when it comes to making sure that our teachers are paid, making sure that our staff is paid. You want well-funded schools. If we have well-funded schools that we can hire that top-tier teacher, then we're not picking that like fourth option that we wanted. We're getting the best possible option that we could, and that's only going to help our students. If you want to build a thriving community, it starts with schools. If you have subpar schools or we're mediocre, families don't want to live here. Like,
Right, and then you can't add to your tax base.
yeah, and then they start moving to all these bedroom communities, and then they start using our resources anyway.
And they have costs.
And they have costs. I mean, at any given time, our population doubles in size during the day. We have to pay for
Right,
those
'cause people go-
services.
everyone goes to work.
So you live in Oakland, you come here,
I do.
you use our resources. You
do.
don't pay a penny for those.
Nope.
We have to pay for that.
Yep. Thank
and
you.
that's
I
where
appreciate
that's
that.
where some people get confused. When you live in the city, it's always more expensive than living in the surrounding communities.
It's also a service center.
We are a huge service center, and I think that we should leverage that and provide services to other communities. And in some respects, we do.
I think one good area that you did well with was the tech side of the tech services for like Winslow.
Yes,
Was it
something
Fairfield
outdoors.
too?
I mean, I come from an IT background in general, so it makes me sort of a logical, rational thinker. And I knew that the prices we had were way too cheap. I mean, the companies I work with, you can walk into a business and you're billing out at anywhere between $125 to $175 an hour.
Yep.
And the city was providing that service to other communities. And
For a fraction of the
They weren't
cost.
even making 80.
Yeah.
So it made sense to go to these other communities and say, listen, you can pay $125 to $175 an hour, or you can meet us here at around $90 and we'll continue, because we're not trying to profit off of that service, but we want to keep that service going.
Right. Well, you got to be able to offer that quality with it.
And I want to offset our costs.
And $90 is 2015 prices.
That's right. So if you're a community
If you're in IT, that's
using
my
IT
background.
services from somebody else, call us.
We got you.
We got you. Listen, our IT department is good. The people we have working for us do a phenomenal
Yes,
job.
they do.
So
I for the most part only know them from doing FOIAs.
yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
but they are very quick at getting it back. So
Yep. They do
they
a
know
good
their
job.
stuff. They definitely do a good job.
So
Let's housing's a big thing.
housing
right
is
now.
always a big thing.
I know that we have there's one family landlord here that has a project going in where the old manor was.
Yep.
Right, on College Avenue.
I believe, I'm not sure how many units that's supposed to
That's
be,
good.
but
So it's going to be 12 buildings. I think it's
That's a big
I told you it was like
I
40
think
units
it's like
or something
34
like that.
units. It's somewhere in that 28 to 38 sort of units. It's definitely up there. It's going to be a mix. So one of the biggest things and reasons I think communities struggle is because look at almost all metropolitan areas. You typically have one area of the city, and every city has an area that's poorer than the others. And cities sort of stick everyone, like you're forced to be there. Like you have to go live in that part of town
Right.
because it's cheaper to live there and you can still get to the other parts of town. Well, what does that breed? More of that. And I think it's important that you take people from different socioeconomic status and sort of merge them together. So having something like what's going to go up by the manor, you're going to have some market rate. You're going to have some work. What do they call that? Work market. Workforce. So you'll have some workforce housing,
Workforce
and you'll have
housing.
some affordable housing. So when you mix populations like that, it's good.
Everyone thrives.
Everyone thrives. It's good for people. I always say they make that joke where the fastest way to be a millionaire is to be friends with other millionaires. Well, because proximity matters.
Absolutely.
And exposure equals growth for your population. So that's very, very
Well,
important for us.
It's like we were talking on one of the podcasts, I'm not sure which one it was, but you were talking something along the lines of if you gave the same 10 people all the money in the world, or I forget how you said it, but yeah, that if you gave, 20 people all the money in the world, the same 10 would come out with all the fortune or something along the lines.
I think someone said that. I don't think.
I don't remember what it was.
I mean,
but-
think about it.
But it definitely made a good point
Money
of
doesn't-
surrounding yourself.
Right.
of-
Just because you
of-
have lots
right.
of money doesn't mean you're good at keeping lots of money.
Exactly. So, kind of like we were talking earlier, if you're not brought up to think that way,
Right.
You don't know.
Well, that's why exposure is important. Exposure
Absolutely.
absolutely equals growth.
Manifestation.
And one of the things that people need to be weary of, and we're always talking about poor people or the middle class or this, that, and the other. Take last year, for instance. How many of you got $1,200 checks?
I got one.
Right?
Everyone.
So everyone got these $1,200 checks or whatever, $1,500 checks, like 2 or 3 times.
Yep.
And now you look at inflation, everybody's like, oh, well, that's the reason. Well, if you think about it, a good half the people that got that money used it for their everyday living expenses, right? They needed that money to keep themselves going. The people that had money or had
Even
some,
they got some of it.
even they got it. And now, what did they do? Well, they didn't have to spend it because their core things that they need to pay for are already paid for.
Right.
So they take
just
that
saved
they
it.
take that money and they save it. They invest it. Well, who gets paid? So you've got people going to Walmart, Home Depot, and all these other places spending that money, that check.
Yeah.
Walmart's getting paid.
Yep.
The man or woman who put aside their money,
Well,
invested it in these companies like Amazon and Walmart, and they've made some money because they've seen the investment go up. At the end of the day, who got the money? The big corporations.
Right.
No matter who you gave it to, the big corporations,
people still got it at the end of the day.
kept getting the money. And you've got these corporations that are like, oh, all of a sudden we're going to start paying $14, $15 an hour. Well, guess what? You're still far behind because I don't want to subsidize your workforce.
Right.
If you can't afford to pay your employees a living wage, then don't have employees. It doesn't. You shouldn't be able to hire people.
corporate welfare.
That's all it is. It's corporate welfare. You want to talk? People talk about welfare all the time. It's corporations. It's
corporate
not the
welfare
people.
is the
Biggest
worst.
one.
You want the people in our community that need the help to get the help because you know what? You still need them to spend the money because that's what keeps the cogs moving.
Right. Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you will create this class of people. It's like Hunger Games. I'm not looking for Hunger Games. I'm not looking for a utopia either. But companies should be paying their own people a livable wage to do the work. Why is McDonald's, Walmart, Hannaford, Home Depot, how come most of those jobs all start out at the same pay? They're not the same kind of labor.
Right.
It's not even close to the same kind of labor. But we allow it. And then who pays for that?
Well,
we do as taxpayers.
I think over the last few decades of building what part-time work originally was, vice what full-time work is, and how the payment structuring has been lumped together.
It's
so
greedy.
Well, that's because of the minimum wage.
Yeah,
Right.
But it's
Lumping it together.
It's great. Minimum wage, please. The federal minimum wage is $7.75. Name somebody who's making $7.75.
Well, nobody. Well,
Then why
it
is
may
this,
nobody.
then why is it still $7.75?
I'd like to see it not even exist.
I know you'd like to have no minimum wage.
Correct.
It didn't work that way. We're not China. We're not paying people $2 a day to work. It's not going to happen.
Realistically, if we had no minimum wage, it wouldn't be $2 an hour. You'd have all these people fighting for the same jobs, and because of that, the rate would go up.
correct.
It's arbitrary at $7.75 and the rate doesn't go up.
It is. You already said it. It's up to $15 now.
In some of
because
these places,
But the corporation
places.
also knows if they raise their minimum wage to $10 an hour, they know it's going to bring the cost of bread and everything else up with it.
so what? Listen, that is the silliest
So
argument.
so
I've
in
ever
in
heard.
the end, who still wins? It would be the corporation.
No, the reason the corporations win is because you allow them to pay people subpar money. How is it you're going to let Walmart have a full-time employee, somebody who's working 40 hours a week, can't even afford to shop in their store? Now, that same employee qualifies for federal benefits, qualifies for state benefits, and qualifies for housing. So
where the corporate welfare.
That's it. So we are subsidizing
No, you're
these
right.
employees.
That's the subsidization that needs to stop. Is the corporate subsidization.
Completely stop it. It's silly that the government picks winners and losers.
I agree.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're a business, you rise and fall on your own merits.
Yep.
And as a
Capitalism,
business, capitalism is that's a different subject. Capitalism on its own, it will never work. Because you think that these people are all of a sudden going to be like, oh, we're going to volunteer our time. People don't volunteer now.
They do volunteer.
Nowhere
They'd volunteer
close.
more if they weren't
they
paying
wouldn't.
40% of their taxes.
No, they wouldn't. And nobody's paying 40% of their taxes. Let me see your tax bill. Is it 40%? I doubt it.
35%, 30%.
How much of it do you get
20%?
back?
I don't know.
So much that you don't know.
No, trust me, not so much.
So
I didn't get any of it back this year.
that's you shouldn't have paid any either. You got to learn to put it away. You can't keep subsidizing these corporations and then vilifying the people that require.
Well, no, that's
these jobs.
why I've always been a
it's
bigger.
not the people's fault.
No,
And if you
that
got
it's
rid of
happening.
minimum wage, you're thinking that these companies are all of a sudden going
It's
to be
not the-
altruistic,
it's-
and they're just not
it's
going to
not
be.
all of a sudden that they're altruistic. It's that they have to compete for the workers.
They have to
So
compete for
because-
the workers now.
Well, it's like
which
and
is
they're not
why-
paying them.
which is
Well, one
why
thing-
which is why the rate's going up without the government telling them that rate has
That's
to go
only
up.
because workers went somewhere else.
Exactly.
Look at
That's
the industries.
market.
Look at the industries that have been hurt the hardest. Service industries.
Yeah.
It's restaurants, hotels. They're all getting hurt.
Yeah.
But you notice that they've all sort of changed the way that they work. How many?
Or they've closed.
Nope.
Like the BK on
How many of them
KMD.
were gonna close? How many times did you shop at that BK on KMD?
I actually went there at least twice a week.
I've lived in the city nearly 14 years. I've never been there.
Really?
Not once.
They were slow, but I went there all the time.
Not one time did I ever go to that Burger King. The other one I
was at the
frequent
other one today.
once or twice a month.
Yeah.
Even so, that those companies have to pay. Will pay their employees more.
Well, they're
I
not
think
now.
there's
The
They'll
pool
have to
is
close.
smaller. So
little
in 2017,
more to it with them.
In 2017, 31 or 37% of the people that working age did some type of gig economy work. Call it DoorDash, freelance, graphic design,
Right.
web design, whatever.
Yep, I was
That-
one of them.
That number is now 57%.
I'm sure.
Because these employees just said, you know what, I'm not going to work for $400 a week anymore. When I
I'm
can
going
go
to be my own boss.
I can go be my own boss, and I'm going to deliver my own food, make $600, $700, $800 a week. And guess who's not telling me what to do? You.
Right, corporate America. The country is moving away from corporate America, which is good because corporate America is.
We say that, but it looks like corporate America is consolidating. I mean,
Well, yeah.
You dig deep and look at who owns Pepsi and who owns Coke.
Yeah,
They're all the
that's
same
right,
company.
right.
So
or almost, or their price.
It's
fixed.
usually the
it's
top
greed.
four
It's going to be greed.
Yeah, of course it's greed.
finance
No one
com-
says it's not greed.
finance companies or
That's
whatever.
why it never works. Leaving capitalism on its own.
We
is-
have a huge safety net in this country. It's never been on its own.
We should have a huge safety net in this country. Why do you want a 50 or 60-year-old person that's worked their entire life, all of a sudden, they get cancer, they got bills out the wazoo, and everything they've worked for their entire life is now gone in a flash?
So
How much should we send to Ukraine?
How much do we send to who?
Ukraine?
We should send zero. So I'm okay with safety nets. I don't like safety nets being at the federal level or even necessarily at the state level. I like, a lot of people don't even know this, but places like City of Waterville have general assistance funds where they can actually help people that are in need. And the difference between that and the state and federal levels is that they have a lot more accountability that they have to account for.
So you
Correct.
know,
So
you know
it
what I
keeps
always find
everybody
funny.
honest.
You know what I always find funny, and we can talk about welfare, and you can talk about the places that need it, and people always get angry or they throw shade at the blue states. It's always the blue states' fault. We spend too much money. We do all this. Do you know that most of the welfare states are red states? They're state like look at all the states. Look at Kentucky. Look at what Kentucky has to do. And look at the people that live there and some of the poverty that they have to deal with. And you've got these senators who come from there that don't want to really do any sort of work for the rest of the country. They're focused on their own community and how to line their own pockets.
Well, that's what it is. It's the career politicians we're sending to D.C.
You're always doing it. So you look at a state like Kentucky, you have their senators who rail against taxes. We shouldn't be doing this.
Probably the one you're talking about is Rand Paul, who actually does a lot of pro bono free work for people that need it.
Great for him.
So it's not like he's railing for him. He's not lining his own pockets, is what I'm saying.
He's lining somebody's pockets.
Well, it's definitely not his pockets.
I don't understand what's going on with some of these states, but some of these states are voting against their own best interest, and they keep putting these people in there. It's sort of nuts at the way that even locally, I hear when we're trying to do stuff, well, if we do that, we're not going to get reelected next round. So what?
People shouldn't worry about.
I don't give a. Listen, I don't care if I get reelected next round. I want to make sure that we're doing what we need to today.
Absolutely.
If that means that I lose my job next year because somebody else is upset over something that I did,
well, that's
so be it.
How politicians think.
Well, no, because they're politicians. That's why I've always told you I'm not a politician. I'm just your neighbor who happens to be the mayor. It's just what it is. I'm your average Joe, everyday person who has opinions, and I'm going to voice my opinions, and I'm going to move on. At the end, Sean, you and I have varying opinions that are completely opposite.
Oh, absolutely.
Yet we end up sitting in a room together.
We've been doing it for
this is the second
four
or third time
4 years now.
Well, here's why it's easy for me. As a human being, I can split it. Like, I can compartmentalize.
Sure.
There are things that I'm willing to be like, it's really sort of a dink, but other than that one subject, he's all right. But there are things that I absolutely will not bend on. If you're a racist piece of shit, I'm calling you out as a racist piece of shit.
I would expect
in 2022, there's absolutely no reason for it.
Anyone.
Right.
If you're a bigot or you're a homophobe and you're complaining about the LGBTQ community, oh, they're trying to force their stuff on me. No, they're not. What they're trying to do is make you aware of what's going on.
And what they feel like.
I'm nearly 45 years old. I have never once felt threatened by a member of the LGBTQ community. They don't.
As a Republican, I've never felt threatened by him.
It's crazy. So I think our issue is that we do break ourselves into communities.
Absolutely.
We are all human.
Well, it's like we had a conversation a while back, and we kind of got into the discussion about the LGBT community and how they have to constantly fight. And I was explaining how it's not necessarily, I understand that, but I don't want to know about that part. I want to know you. You see what I mean? So I don't want to know about the fight, but I want to know you.
That's great for you. But here's
you won't know their struggle.
Right.
Yeah, but and let's remove the struggle. Let's remove all the things that everyone is going through. We look at minorities. We look at the LGBTQ community. We look at women's rights issues. When you start, we complain. People are like, oh, well, that's the first black woman to do this. Some people will be like, why do I care that she's black? It's not about you. It's about representation.
Oh,
there's a little girl sitting in her house that looks just like that person that we're talking about, and that little girl just got an idea in her head that shit's possible for me too.
Yep.
I can do it. That's why.
My issue I take is the people that exploit that.
So what? Listen.
That's the issue I take.
People exploit everything. People are going to
and you see it on both sides of the aisle.
Of course.
Jeremy and
like
I
we talked about
this
earlier,
before.
fear-mongering is always a big seller.
If you live in a community, there are many people that think Waterville isn't welcoming to an LGBTQ community. And there are some people in this town that are just bigoted people.
I think you get that wherever you go, though.
That's a cop-out. Yes, you may find it wherever you go.
I'm sure it could be worse in some places,
not the
but
overwhelming
I don't care.
Majority of the good people.
So I don't care that it can be worse in some places. I don't live in some places. I live in Waterville. So I will fight every day to make sure that the marginalized members of the human race are taken care of. And they don't need me to take care of. I'm an average white dude from Maine. Nobody needs me to go out and represent the black community. Nobody needs me to go out and represent the LGBTQ community. They have members of their communities that have voices. Many times we talk where we should just be sitting back and listening to what the people who are on the front lines are actually having to face. We don't know their struggle. I definitely don't. I can tell some of the stories, but I have yet to meet a person in our town that doesn't have a story. Like, everyone has a story. But I think listening to Black voices, listening to the voices of Hispanic people, making sure that you're listening to the Asian community, making sure that you're listening.
All the minorities that have unequal representation.
You know, I hate that. I hate the term minority because we're all human. We are not minorities.
We're all the human race.
We're all a human race.
Yeah.
However, people that look like me, white, all pasty
There's a lot
and
more
shit,
of us than them.
we sort of, how do I say this in a, I don't care how I say it. We fucked the pooch. Listen,
We did.
we made it harder for all of these other communities. And when
The drug war, gentrification.
when you have
Redlining.
when you have somebody from the LGBTQ community, or you have somebody from the Black community, and they're saying something to you, just shut up and listen.
Yep.
You can, the moment you say, well, it's not all white people, you're the fucking problem.
Right. You're not listening.
You're not listening. You're part of the issue.
Yeah.
Well, it has nothing to do. It does have something to do with you because you're complacent. And if you're going to be complacent, then you're part of the issue. You should. Well, let's segue. We were going to talk about Supreme Court this week.
Yes.
I think they made a terrible mistake.
On which call? Roe versus Wade?
Of course.
There was a bunch.
Listen.
So, that's
Roe
one of the
v.
biggest
Wade
ones, but there are other big ones.
The biggest mistake that I have seen in the 45 years that I have been alive. You have now made it open season on every amendment.
The difference,
Go
so there's a
ahead.
difference.
Tell me the difference.
The difference is that there's nothing written in the Constitution
Right,
that
that's what I
talks
was just
about
gonna
abortion.
say.
So it was the Supreme
Give me something.
Court.
Give me something in the Second Amendment that talks about ammo.
Obviously, you need ammo to be able to shoot a gun.
Why? No, there's nothing. It says you have the right to bear arms. It doesn't
Yeah.
say that you have a right to shoot them.
Correct. So what really should
So
have
we
happened...
get. So once we ban bullets, what are you all gonna do? Run around with your guns, going pew pew because you can't do nothing else?
No, what really should have happened is they should have actually done the abortion debate on a different case law. So have you ever heard of Strzok versus the Secretary of Defense? Because that is what would have fought it for gender discrimination, which is what Ruth Bader Ginsburg was in the middle of trying to fight
that's
until
what her argument
Roe
was.
versus Wade came by over the privacy laws and not gender
Okay,
discrimination.
so let me tell you about how fucking privileged we are that we're sitting here as three white men
Yep.
talking about issues that have nothing to do with us.
Correct.
It's a woman's right.
Yep.
It is
That's why I'm pro-choice.
Women's health. It's on them.
But I can also, as a man,
Don't-
point
don't
out
even-
what's
don't
right
listen.
and wrong. So,
No, you can't.
oh yes, I can.
You cannot tell me what is right and wrong for another human being. You can tell me what is right and wrong for you, but you can't sit here and say, I don't think that you should have an abortion because I have a different opinion. No, that is her body. She will do whatever she wants to with the direction of her doctor, and that's where it ends.
Right.
So now,
I used to think this way. I used to.
so now you've
but now I
opened,
don't.
no, now you've opened
Nope.
up the 14th Amendment.
I like he said. I do
So
not
what's
agree
next,
with the
gay
way
marriage?
that I do not agree with the way that they
What's
It's
next?
possible.
argued.
That's what
Yeah.
No, it is.
talk
You
about
are
it.
Well,
correct.
we keep sending it back to states. It's a state's
But-
issue. It's not a state issue. It's a woman's issue.
Right.
It has nothing to do with the state. It's between her and her doctor.
As it
Zero.
always should been.
Zero to do
That's
with the
why
state.
it should have been the discrimination of
You know,
gender equality, though.
You know why men
Not
in general,
privacy.
and not
Right.
all, and again, let's try this, not all men, because somebody's going to come at me complaining.
Fuck them.
Men always want to tell women what to do because you want control.
I don't want control.
Men want control. Listen,
Just because
it's
I
in
don't
your-
believe in ending life or what could be life doesn't
So I have one for you.
make me wrong. And in
I
the
have a
argument, like
woman.
we were talking earlier, it comes
Yeah.
down to incest and rape because that's what I used to believe abortion as long as it was in those parameters, that it was okay. Now I don't believe that it's the child's fault. I don't believe in it at all.
So now
not
if a woman
even
gets raped.
No, absolutely not. It is not the child's
I am
fault.
so glad that you don't have the option to tell a woman what the fuck she can do with her body. Let me tell you, at 0 point do you have the ability to look me in the eye.
I can say what's right and wrong, and I believe anything that is wrong.
No.
So
it's not telling me what's right and wrong. You're telling me your opinion. That is not what's right and wrong. You're giving me an opinion. You're telling me that...
That's your opinion.
So you're telling me that a 12-year-old girl who gets raped...
Honestly, I would like to see the child go up for adoption, yes.
So you're going to make that 12-year-old child carry a child? Fuck no. No, absolutely not. I will fight every day.
Because at that point, if you're going to talk about capital punishment, I think we should be talking about capital punishment at the rapist or the incest
But that
hand.
doesn't solve the problem.
If we're going to play that
as a
somebody has to
child.
die,
No.
if we're going to play the subject somebody has to die, let's talk about
Listen,
the rapist or the incestus.
If you're going to look at me and say that it's the pedophiles that should die... I have
if you want to play the capital punishment angle.
It's not capital punishment. A woman has something growing inside of her. You're saying as long as it doesn't affect the woman, her health, then she should carry it to term. But you're requiring another human being that is sovereign to have to do something because you think it's morally wrong. Let's start talking about morality and the fact that your morals are for you. Your morals are not for me. If you like to go to church on Sundays, great. I don't. And I'm not going to put my beliefs on... Actually, I will fight for your belief to go to church on Sunday. What I won't fight for is your ability to come tell me that I should have to go to church on Sunday. Go eat a bag of dicks. A huge bag. Listen,
but I'm also not
supper?
arguing that the states shouldn't have the opinion to have abortion.
No,
I had no
the state shouldn't have an
way.
opinion. The state should have
The
zero
state
opinion between
should
a
be the
woman and
one
her
having
doctor.
that decision.
So
Zero.
right
It
now,
shouldn't be a
it's now a
state's
state's issue.
Well, don't we elect our
No.
our elected
So what do you
officials
do
to
about
represent
states
us?
to get rid of it? What do you do about the
government.
states to get rid of abortion?
Well, isn't that why you elect the officials you elect?
No, because I don't know what's going on with Kentucky and all these other places, but I sure as hell ain't picking Mitch McConnell to be my fucking representative.
Well, it's like you said. If you live in a town and you like it the way you like it, you're going to fight for it to stay the way you want it. So if it's different somewhere else, why would you argue the difference?
I'm going to have to say this unequivocally. At no point, at 0 point, should we have the ability to tell another human being how they should live their life. If you want to, not even want, you are born gay. It's not a choice. Like,
the LGBT thing can stay out of it. We're talking pregnancy and abortion here, man.
So we're going. So now you're saying that a trans man who was a woman who is now transitioned to a man who may end up pregnant should have to carry that child because you want him to carry that child. No. You don't get that right to tell someone. Your rights end where mine begin. They don't overlap. You don't get to come to my house and tell me what I'm going to do.
You're correct.
So, but
if we're going to be out in public square arguing the fact, see,
She's not in public square.
This is where
it's not
the
public
trans
square.
thing. This is the argument where behind closed doors, I will address you however you want to be addressed. But if we're going to talk about the subject, I'm going to talk about it how it's going to be. Now coming, like you said, coming to your house.
I don't understand what you mean how it's going to be.
All right.
And I'm sorry, but being trans or being gay or being black or being Asian isn't something that you should only be able to do in your house and only
See,
be able to talk about
you're
in your
colluding
house.
other
No, you
things.
said it.
No, I did not say
You
anything.
said as long as it's in the privacy of their house.
I said nothing about black or I was talking about transgenderism.
Why? Do you think that there's no black transgender women out there?
I'm not talking that. What I'm talking is...
See, I don't separate it.
If-
Women are women. Men are
Oh,
men.
absolutely. Men are men, women are women. But if
so
a
we're-
guy wants to be a woman, more power to him.
No,
I have no problem with that.
It's not a him. So if you
Her. Well, at
that's
that point, it would be a her.
If you've
I have no
transitioned-
problem with that. But if we're going to talk about the science basis of it, I'm going to talk in it as him and him, her
are
and
you
her.
really going to talk to me about science when you're like, I don't want to take a shot?
Take a shot?
Did you get the COVID shot?
Hell no.
Then don't talk to me about science. Why is science okay when it's useful for your argument, but not okay when it's not? Like, you can't say the science and then be like, only when it's
Something
happening.
that's fundamentally there when you're born, vice something that was fundamentally made by man.
So, no.
What do you mean, no?
A
Yes.
trans person, be it male or female.
Now, okay, so
Doesn't-
now this is where you're colluding me with me in this subject. If Jan wants to be Bob, Jan can be Bob. I have no problems with that. I'll even go to Bob's house and have a barbecue with him. Me and Bob can hang out.
Wait, in public, you're not going to talk to Bob?
Absolutely, I talk to Bob.
Are
Bob's
you
a
gonna
cool dude.
Are you going to call Bob Bob?
But if we're going to get down to having to fight about the argument,
What
I'm
argument?
going to go with.
So I think
the
the argument
basis
he's making
of-
is gender versus sex.
Yes.
I'm assuming.
Thank you.
there is no argument.
Well, sex is the scientific.
Sex is something
your
people
body.
do in their house.
Gender is a social construct.
I mean, you can have sex by yourself.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, but-
what is a social construct? A construct of what? You have to fit in this little hole? No.
I'm not arguing. I'm just telling you where he's coming from.
Well, I'm
In
glad that he's telling
fitting,
me where he's
I have
coming
no
from.
problem with fitting. You do whatever you want. I have no problem with that.
Well, you do.
No, I don't.
Unless it's something that you don't agree with. Because do whatever you want, don't have an abortion because I don't agree with it. You see the logic. Like, you see how
But
it goes.
murdering something is inherently wrong, no matter how you look at
it's
it.
not murder.
It goes back
It's murder.
to
I'm
what we
sorry.
talked about earlier.
We're going to
It all
disagree on this one,
depends.
Jay.
We have stem cells. Where do you think stem cells come from? Embryos.
And I'm not a fan of that either. So,
I don't
yes, I
care-
can.
So let's try this again. I don't care, and the rest of the population doesn't care what you think.
Well, then the rest
it
of the
affects-
population doesn't
Nope.
care what you think.
You're right.
It can go both
They
ways.
don't. They shouldn't think about what I think. You know what they should think about? What they feel. What they think.
More power to them. But if we're going to get onto the subject
Of
of boiling it down to the nitty gritty
What nitty gritty?
of whatever discussion we're having, if we're just out having whatever, we're out and about hanging out. It is.
If we're going to talk,
We can
about
play
it,
the fairy tale.
there is no.
I have
fairy
no
tale.
problem playing
What
the fairy tale.
What fairy tale? Are you telling
But
me?
if it comes down to pointing out what the difference really is, I'm going to point out what the scientific fact is.
So you're okay with continuously pointing out our differences?
How do you figure?
You just said it. I mean, those are your words. If we're going to get to the nitty gritty, and I have to start
Absolutely.
talking about- I'm going to talk
If-
about the differences.
If Jan wants to be Bob, when we're hanging out with Bob and it's not a political conversation, Bob is Bob. But if we're going to talk about Jan,
Jan is no longer Jan. Jan is now Bob.
no, Jan will always be Bob. Bob will be Jan. I'm tired of people pulling themselves apart. That's who they are.
No.
Why can't I get to know them? Why do I have to pull it?
Them as
You're
a
not
pronoun
pulling
them,
it.
or-
See,
You're
that's
trying to pull
that's
what they're giving you.
That's the issue. Now, what I'm saying is out in public, that's fine. I'll pretend. I'll do whatever you want. But if we're going to go into a classroom and teach children or something, scientific basis of what it is.
Listen,
want any of that
is-
shit.
We are
is
going
this
to
right- is this
we are
looking
going
at
to
me?
disagree
Yes.
All right,
on,
I want
this
this to look
abortion
at me for a
subject.
second.
This is looking at you.
unequivocally, whatever
This is
he,
what they-
what he
people
just
see.
said
This is what people see.
blows my mind. At no point, listen, if you don't want your children to learn something, put them in a different school.
Absolutely. If
If-
that's not your
At no
you want,
point,
yeah.
listen, if Jan transitioned to Bob,
she's Bob.
no, he is Bob. There is no she. He is Bob.
In this argument, it's she.
No, it's not. In your mind, it's she. In reality,
It's Bob.
it's Bob. Bob is a he. And Bob will continue to be a he. until Bob dies. Period. I'm not sure why that's hard to grasp.
It's not.
Good. Then
I don't know what's so hard for you to grasp.
I'm not. You're the one still calling Bob a she in some aspects.
If you want to get into talking about the issue, yes.
What issue? You want to talk about?
Like we're doing now, I'm going to call it what it is. If we are all hanging out and we are just
why
being what it is.
So are you being disingenuous when you're talking to Bob, or are you being disingenuous when you're in a public atmosphere?
So am I being disingenuous to Bob pretending?
Pretending what?
When they're trying to be something they're not?
They are. They're not to you, but they are. You can't.
In this argument, I'm correct. Yes, they're not.
No, they absolutely are. Listen.
But if it's going to be
if-
us getting to know each other, yes, it's Bob. I have no problem with that.
If a woman transitions to a man, or a man transitions to a woman, they are what they are.
So
Exactly.
both of you guys are right.
No.
So he's right in the fact that the actual sex of the person doesn't biologically change. But you're correct in that the gender of them, they feel and they associate with how they feel with a different gender.
Thank you.
So they are, and I watched this big you should watch it. It was a Dr. Phil episode where he had a bunch of different people on that were transgender, binary, cis. So that, I just watched it today, ironically enough. So they're gender-wise, they are identifying either they, them, he, her, he, him, she,
Pronouns.
her. Right,
You got it.
pronouns.
You already lost me.
And they're just different pronouns.
I know, but trying to keep track of all of it.
It's a lot of information. You don't have to keep up.
So,
Not trying to.
In the realm of gender, they identify, and as a person, I'm not going to be an asshole, so I'm gonna be like, whatever you identify as, I'm going to call you. It's just
Absolutely.
as well as their name, or as well whatever their name is, whatever they change their name and identify as, I'll call them that. Whether or not I'm in person, I'm in the back, wherever I am, because
That's the way it should be.
That's exactly how I would be.
right now. So, but you're still right that they identify as female, and you're still right that they are
No.
biologically, chromosomes, gender, they are still biologically male.
If
Unless
we
they-
are talking about the argument.
So
No, that's
listen,
not the argument.
How is it not the argument?
Because you're talking
years-
about something other than what they are.
50 years.
All right,
from
we're going to
now-
have to move on from this subject because I don't see us
Well, hold on a
agreeing
second.
or
We don't have to
disagreeing.
agree.
50 years from now, if they were to dig up that body,
Exactly.
that body would still be male.
Thank you.
So that's the sex part versus the gender part. That's the difference.
So which are you saying, that their gender is incorrect? Or
I'm not saying anything's
I'm not
incorrect.
saying any of it is incorrect. I'm saying that gender is a social.
Why does it have to be
construct
wrong?
that
Why
we
is
have?
who has?
So it's all
I don't have that.
societies,
Listen,
all
no.
cultures, all countries. I didn't say that in gender there's only male, female.
Because there isn't.
Right. I'm saying that when they change who they are, they're not literally changing the science and their sex inside of them. So
Some of them are.
50 years from now, if they but there's even if you change and chop off whatever and you get gender
Called
reassignment
a
surgery,
penis.
yeah, there's still things inside you
a
that will
plasty
still identify
something.
you as male. I'm saying that you're both right and that neither one of you guys can be assholes to the other person and just call them with whatever they
Oh,
want to be called.
I can absolutely be an asshole. I
Well, you
that's
can.
just who.
Well,
But
yeah.
yes,
I mean,
you
that-
are.
But why?
complete
There's
asshole.
no
let's
point
be
in trying to
honest.
hurt
I'm
people's
I'm
feelings.
just saying
There's
that you
not.
can call them what they. I have kids that are in my kids' school. They go by they them.
Yep.
My kids have absolutely no problem doing that.
Okay.
Good for them. Now, they didn't change the innards of them. And 50 years from now, they're going to, if they buried someone up or did an autopsy, they would actually have the sex of the person that they were born as. The difference is that their gender and how they see themselves has changed,
I think
which is
you-
why
you-
society has.
I think you keep interchanging the words sex and gender.
I'm not perfect. I'm not interchanging them. Gender is the social construct that can change. The sex is not. It literally, you can't change this. The sex is everything that you compose of inside of you. And that you can't, you're not going to, like I said, there's scientific proof to, back it up.
Do we have XY or YY in this? I'm not a scientist, so I must go by what I see.
Yes. Well, actually, you can't even go by what you see.
Why? Why can't I?
Because,
listen,
because I see you as what I would presume in this country as a male doesn't mean you're necessarily going to identify as a male. So you can't go by what you see. You're even saying that, but you're not saying that.
I think you sort of missed, or I twisted my own words, where that is not correct. I think that if I look at you and you have a beard, and I'm going to assume that you're a male.
Correct.
What I'm not going to do is assume that you were a cis male.
You shouldn't even assume that you're a male.
No,
if you're going to go based on transgenderism, you could, in transgenderism, you could be trans, you could be non-binary, so you're not either one.
This is why I hate this argument, because I just like being friends with people.
But at the end of the day, if I see someone who appears to me to be female,
yep,
I'm going to treat her as such. If
Correct.
I see somebody who looks like a male,
yep,
I'm going to treat him as such. I'm not asking people what they were born with in their pants.
Well, no, but some people actually find it more appropriate to identify themselves as their gender so that you don't misgender them.
Well,
I'm just telling you what people say.
In my initial meeting of you,
yep,
if you don't give me that information, then I don't. Perfect example. I have these friends. They're married.
Yep.
They both go as they, them.
Correct.
She is a cis female who isn't a she now. She's a they, them. He was a cis male who is also now a they, them. And for years, I called them both he and she. I mean,
because you assumed that that's what they went by.
And they never corrected me.
Right.
Somebody else corrected me. So I had to go to my friends after that I'd known for. I'm like, is this real? Well, yeah. Well, how come you didn't tell me? Well, we weren't sure.
They probably didn't know how to tell you, or what you would
probably your reaction maybe
to that.
Well, maybe, and how shitty is that my friends felt like they couldn't tell me.
I agree.
Because they didn't know how I was going to react. Well, they shouldn't have to worry about how I'm going to react. And if I call you a male by accident, it's your job to be like, hey, I'm not. This is... And then from that moment, it's up to me
to correct yourself.
Correct myself or act like the problem doesn't exist.
Right.
And I will err on the side of correcting myself, because when a human tells me this is what I want to be, this is what I identify as, this is what I feel to my core, then I want to celebrate that with you. I don't want to change your mind.
We're saying the same
I don't
thing
want
here.
you to be some...
Same exactly.
Just not at the end.
The difference is that is called their gender.
I'm not splitting it.
You
don't have to. I'm not a scientist. I don't have to split it.
I'm just telling you, when someone corrects you because it's their gender, that's why.
And they should correct me.
I mean, if you incorrectly say someone's pronouns, they
treat
should
everyone with respect. People,
yeah,
do not
should.
Everyone wants to be respected, regardless of who you are.
Well, they should. Any questions or nobody watching you?
I have no idea.
No. So there's someone.
We had a few in the beginning. We may have dropped out a little bit.
I'm sure, because they didn't. I'm on a conservative channel talking about.
Well, it's because it was supposed to be at 8 and now it's 10:30. So that's
so what else are we talking about?
So earlier you talked about celebrating someone's right to go to church. What do you feel about one of the other Supreme Court rulings that came down, where the teacher got fired from praying on the football field after the football game?
Listen, if you want to tell yourself a little prayer.
We have one question before we move.
All right.
Yeah. How do you feel about minors receiving mental health counseling under the...
You got to say the whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
It says, why are state employees not telling their parents? 12 and under minors may ask for mental health counseling without parental consent. So why are we saying state employees are not telling the parents because they are invoking this law, making trans and identity changes a mental disorder? If it is not a mental disorder, then why are they keeping secrets from parents?
I'm sorry. Did somebody just try to tell me that being gay or trans or something like that is a mental health issue?
So why are we saying state employees are not telling them?
No.
They are invoking this law, apparently they're invoking a law that's making trans and identity changes a mental disorder. I don't know, to Alan, if he writes back, is there like a state law that's talking about?
I'm not sure on this one.
Hold on a second.
Being trans is not a mental health issue.
Hold on. He wants to.
Just so we're clear.
We haven't done this, so we're going to do something. We're going to have a call-in from the audience. We don't...
It's 10:30. I gotta get going soon.
Yeah, we can finish up in a little bit and then call it a night because it's been... All right, so, Alan, if you call, why don't you do me a favor and call... we're going to put the headphones on, but...
Call in on my Facebook if he wants.
No, it comes right to
okay, I got
the system. 207-250-1010. And then Joni says that it looks enjoyable.
It is. I don't have an issue debating.
Hey, can you hear me? Are you there?
Hold on. Hello?
Hey, Are you there, Alan?
I am. Sorry about that.
Hey, that's okay. What's going on? This is our first call-in.
No, I saw you went live, and I was able to catch it. So I was listening and just had a question because we had a issue down here in SAD 75 that we were speaking with the board with and principals about. The state employees are not telling parents when a child approaches them to speak to them about changing their identity, using different names, and that the same topic you're talking about. So we were trying to get to the bottom of. Go ahead. Do you want to say something?
Well, first of all, I would assume that this child is going to some sort of guidance counselor or some sort of person that is equipped to deal with therapy, and any of those sessions would sort of be private. I mean, that's not between. I get why a parent would want to know. Like I think I would want to know, but I have open lines of communication with my children, and I feel like they'd tell me before they went to a guidance counselor.
Okay, so sticking with the law, right? So 12 and under, a child is able to request mental health counseling.
Yep.
That protects the child from the parents knowing, right? We don't live in a perfect world. There's definitely children that need help without having to go home into bad situations, which is why a lot of people wanted kids back in schools as possible.
Agreed.
Okay, so what you just referenced as they're getting therapy or speaking to counselors, when you say that provokes as if the identity issues are a mental health issue, because people with mental health go to see counselors.
I see what he's saying.
Okay, but I am objectively trying to figure out the lawful reason that parents do not know if their child are using different names and basically living two different identities, one at home and one at school. The problem is that if to use that new identity at school so they can learn better, so they're not trying to hold anything in, how the environment at home with the child is the number one factor in educational success. So if they're withholding that stuff from home, then you're going to have a negative, you're canceling out any positive that you're doing at the school. So first step for us was, well, what's the law? So if they're not telling parents based on the 12 and under law that says you don't have to tell parents if the child asks you to, then you're invoking a mental health law. You're invoking law that's based on mental health. If the identity issues are not mental health, issues, which maybe they're not, I don't know, then they should be telling the parents, because there's not, it's not lawful to keep secrets. And a lot of schools have policies that say you can't keep secrets.
Well, because the schools are there for the student, not the parents. And I'm not. I'd have to look at the law. I'd have to read it to sort of understand why. But I've occasionally gone to talk to somebody else, and I don't have mental health issues, but that communication is still private. And I think that children do need to be protected sometimes from their own parents. I mean, it is true, but I think that these people are duty bound if the child is in danger to report it.
Right. It's called a mandated reporter.
So if the child isn't in danger, there's really nothing to report to the parent.
So as a father of three,
I appreciate the question, but
as a father of three, I would hate to be that parent at home where my children think they have to discuss this at school instead of with me. And that would probably be one of the worst injustices if the kid doesn't feel like they can come to their parent. But we gotta wrap things up.
All right, we appreciate it, guys.
No problem. Thanks for the call, Alan.
Thanks for calling in, bud.
Bye.
yeah, I mean that's something for the schools. Schools are no longer. People need to stop thinking about schools when we were kids.
We've been having
Right.
this conversation for a little while now, and I think a lot of people
chat.
do understand the differences that schools and what teachers do at schools has changed
Dramatically.
from what it was, say, a decade ago. I mean, like you're saying, they're playing more. They're playing more roles.
Yeah, I mean they have to do speech pathology. They have to do a litany of things that these children need for services, and the best place to have that is, you're at school. You're there for
every day,
7 or 8
mostly.
hours of the day. You can get pulled aside and get the services that you need.
Right.
I think what parents are sort of upset about sometimes is that they don't have the control. Well, guess what? If you want the control, homeschool your kid.
Yeah, I also think parents just they don't like not knowing what their kids
Talk to your kids.
are. Right, I agree.
Talk to your kids. Don't be afraid to talk to your children, and don't make it that if your child has a differing opinion, that you're going to try to hammer into them a different opinion. You must let them grow their own. I don't live my children's lives.
No,
it's their lives.
No, if you do try to
Three
do
strong,
that, usually
independent women.
they usually double down and do
I
what you don't want them to do.
Listen, I have daughters that are going to throw left hooks, and I'm okay with it. I've always said I'm pretty liberal when it comes to social issues. I think I'm conservative when it comes to financially, a little bit more conservative. Although some would say I'm extremely liberal on that too, but whatever. I think when you're too far on the other side, everything looks extreme to you. But no, you can't. You can't live your kids' lives. They have to be able to explore on their own. They have to come to those decisions. The only thing you should do as a parent is be there to support your child. Make sure they have clothing. Make sure they have food and a roof over their head. After that, they're going to live
And
their
a person
lives.
they can talk to.
One last question here. School choice. If you're saying if it comes down to if you're worried about what your kids are learning in school, homeschool, how do you feel about school choice and being able to move schools?
So I've
and all
always
that?
been a little bit more open on that. I think that, and let's go back. I'm not religious by any means, but if your school district says that your kid costs $12,000 a year to send to school, well, give me that $12,000. I'll send my kid to any school I want to that'll take him.
Yep.
Okay. So if you want to then take your money and go to, we have a great school, Temple Academy.
Yep.
It's a religious school.
But it's a good school.
Oh, we got Mount Mercy too. So,
like I said, we have Temple Academy. They do a good job over there. They're over in my neighborhood. Their students are always out doing volunteer work. I mean, they're trying to be
good stewardess,
good members of the community. If you're a parent that is unhappy with your school district, take your money and run. I mean, I'm sorry, but let's all be honest. None of you are paying enough taxes to even send your kid to school.
No. Not for what they cost. No one's paying $12,000 in the local city taxes.
In the people that are able to pay $12,000, $15,000, $20,000 a year for their kids to have tuition, they don't give a shit.
Right.
They don't care
They're
about
not really taking care.
They
of
don't care about
anyway.
the resources that your kid needs.
Right.
They worried about their own kid.
And they're probably the ones going to the private schools already.
Oh, of course they are. But that money should be able to be used. I mean, it's your tax money. No matter what it's being spent on, is a collection of all of our monies put together. It's not like they're like, oh, well, this is the $2,000 that Sean paid this year. We'll use 500 of it for this and five. No, it all gets lumped in.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
It's never earmarked for one specific thing.
So what else do we have? Supreme Court. We've got like 2 more subjects. Let's do this.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court is the new one that talks about how New York it got stopped that for someone that wants to conceal carry in New York, they no longer need to prove a burden above and beyond the burden that they'd have to prove, which is just simply for self-defense. They always had to prove above and beyond just being able to defend themselves.
Yeah, they had to have a reason, store owner.
New York
But they had to have precedent as to why.
is a quagmire.
It is.
Like New York is just a melting pot of ideologies, and certain people get into power and they want to do what they want to do. We watch it everywhere. I mean, it's not New
York, California, New Hampshire.
I think Maine
Florida
has one of the best systems. Like, we don't have a permit for concealed carry.
Nope.
We don't have a lot of
Thank you,
shootings.
Eric
You got
Ricky.
constitutional carry.
We don't have a lot of we don't have those sorts of issues in Maine. And other states that are pretty that way with their guns also don't have those same sorts of issues.
So the difference being that the state that, and most of the states like this that have similar makeups of us, is that we are a lot different geographical wise than a New York would
Yes.
be. Because New York has big spot loss of area, but in New York City, for instance, millions of people live there. We don't have those we have such a big spread out geography of where people live, and we have it's like what probably 89% white.
Oh yeah, we're
so
we're grossly
I want to say we're like 98%.
people are grossly
Yeah, I said
underrepresented in our
I
state.
said 89, I'm sorry.
So think about it. When people talk about guns and they talk about criminals, and they're like, "Oh, well, look, the most liberal cities are the ones with the most gun issues." Yeah, they always point to what? Chicago.
Yep. We had this chat the other night.
And they're always like, "Oh, well, if you think Black Lives Matter, what are you doing about black on black crime in Chicago?" Shut up. Listen.
It'd be less black on black crime if we decriminalize drugs and stop the welfare and drugs.
No, you know what? There'd be less black on black crime if they weren't all segregated into one population.
Right.
I mean, think about it.
Gentrification.
No, it's not even gentrification. Do you think Asian people shoot more white people than they shoot Asian people?
I'd have to look at the FBI.
I don't know.
Of course not.
I'm not sure.
White people shoot more white people than they shoot anybody else.
Of course. Yes.
It's proximity. It's not that
It's ratios also.
No, because people try to say, "Oh, they're more violent." No, they're not. People of color are not more violent. They're stuck in a culture where everyone is in that same proximity. It's all about bravado and trying to get out of the hood.
Right. Well, that's what I'm talking about. If we didn't have the war on drugs, we wouldn't have things that are systemically keeping them feeling oppressed. We wouldn't have these same issues.
So let's change that, because it's not like they're feeling oppressed. They are oppressed.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not a feeling. They are oppressed. I mean, at every turn, anyone who's like, "Oh, well, there's no such thing as white privilege," bullshit. There absolutely is.
We have systemic racism in this country, especially in places like that, Chicago, anywhere where there's really.
I believe privilege can exist on all spectrums.
Now, listen.
No,
it's not just one.
Here's how it goes. And when people say white privilege, they're not telling you that your life isn't hard.
Right.
They're not saying that. What they're telling you is that you don't have to fear driving down the street and getting pulled over because you're white.
No, you're absolutely right.
That's privilege.
And if you are pulled over, you're going to have a vastly different result than the black guy that gets pulled over.
Absolutely.
specifically because of your skin color and racial profile.
Yes, I was gonna say. Now it also depends on how you dress, because I've seen the profiling and how it can
I've seen
change.
people-
From
Listen, it
suit,
shouldn't
person
matter
to
how you're
person, yeah.
dressed.
No, you're absolutely right.
If
and
you're
that's
a
what I was just gonna
6-foot
say.
black man and you want to run down the street in a kilt,
You shouldn't risk being shot.
You shouldn't risk being shot.
No, I
You-
completely
it
agree.
shouldn't
With you.
happen.
Nobody should
You
have
shouldn't
to,
have
to
three
be
white
shot.
people try attacking you because people think
No,
that
I
you just
I
got
don't
done
know.
breaking into a house.
Okay.
It says, it's just Alan, thank you.
Alan's welcome. White privilege absolutely exists, and it's not to say that. So I'm gonna take me. I grew up extremely poor. Like I might be the mayor today. I grew up extremely poor, but you know what? Growing up extremely poor, next to my buddy Ernest, who happened to be African American. I guarantee that his life was harder than mine in different aspects. People looked at him funny, and I know this. So, my stepdad's from Haiti, right? So we all know this. I grew up in my entire life, but a good portion of my youth, I lived in a biracial household, and I listen to people of color today. And I always listen to the words that my dad said. Like, he would tell me, yes, this is the way it is, but it's not always because of this. Sometimes it's because of this. I absolutely guarantee that my black friends, even though we grew up together, had a much harder time with the people around us, because although I was poor and I was the scrawny little white kid.
No, I'm not doubting it.
Right.
I've seen it.
Look different.
I've seen it here in the state of Maine.
My teachers weren't harder on me because I was white. I guarantee my black brothers and sisters, their lives were a little harder because of their teachers. And they'll say, oh, I try to push you a little harder to get you out. No, we will claw our way out. It was much easier for me as a white person to claw my way out of the hood than it was. So many of my friends are now dead or in prison, and much of it to do just from the color of their skin, not from the type of person that they were.
They probably didn't even get a chance to be the type
No
of
one's
person
eliminating that.
Well,
So when they're
does.
saying that you have privilege, they're not saying that your life has been that your life is easy. We still acknowledge your hardships. At no point was the color of your skin a factor in why it was hard for you.
Absolutely.
So when people think about the words white privilege, that's what they have to think about. Nobody is saying that you're privileged simply because you've got all of this stuff because you're white. No, what they're saying is that, hey, your life may have been a struggle. My life is a struggle. We're equal there. Where we're not equal is that your struggle was made harder because you were black. That's bullshit.
Yeah. And especially when you pass laws like redlining, specifically to hurt people of the minority communities.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right there.
Like literally, the black people would always get worse sentences for what they were doing than the white people.
I remember
All the time.
All the time.
I mean, you want to talk about
Literally
systemic
crap
racism?
cocaine.
Look at
Which was the
our
same
prison
thing.
system. You want to talk about systemic racism? You want to talk
Absolutely.
about making things more difficult for people? Just go look at the resources that they don't have. How is it that a neighborhood that is predominantly black always gets less funding?
Yeah, exactly.
How? It doesn't make sense. They always get less funding.
No, you're right. I ain't arguing.
So
that.
now we just got to do something about it.
Absolutely.
What do you do about it? You get
You get rid of the laws that are causing that.
I would start by getting rid of some of the old white people. Like boomers, it's time. Like, I'm a Gen Xer. Like, we have pretty much gone under the radar.
Yeah, and that's where
in
the
culture
Democrats
wars.
have mastered their infiltration of keeping control. I don't
Do you
know
think Democrats have control?
how many of Democrats keep money from going places where it should be going.
I think it's a
Oh, no.
it's a power thing.
I think-
Republicans are the same way.
Yeah,
That's why
absolutely. You got
I'm
that
not a
completely
Republican.
twisted. There is no big democratic agenda that's going to ruin it for everyone. I will point out a few Republican ones that are going to doom us all.
And point out a few Democrat ones that are going to
Give me
doom us
one.
all. Pelosi.
She doesn't vote. She doesn't represent me. Nancy
No,
Pelosi,
but she has a lot of pull on what happens in our lives.
Really?
Look at gas. That's all their party. That was all they're doing.
I'm
Schumer
sorry.
and all them.
If you're
Biden.
going to sit here and try to blame gas prices on Democrats, I'm calling bullshit. Tell me why a barrel of oil is still the same price it was when Trump was in office.
Why are we not?
Why are refineries closing and not producing nearly as much fuel as they did?
Because we stopped the permitting process on federal land that
Good.
allowed.
They weren't
companies
even
to
drilling
drill.
they weren't even drilling the permits that they had.
So the
And
look at
what
these big oil
about
companies
and
that
what
keep-
about the oil pipeline that was closed? What was it? 2 days after Biden was.
So what? It was the
In
XL
office?
pipeline. It wasn't even moving
Right?
fuel
Now,
for us.
now let's
It
talk.
wasn't even being used.
Let's talk
Wasn't
about
even used.
Biden allowing what is it, Nord Stream 2, the Russian pipeline to continue.
I'm sorry. Did you just say that the United States president allowed a sovereign nation to do what they wanted to do?
Wasn't the UN and everything that was involved
Listen.
with all the permitting process
Listen,
that
UN
brings it into
No. Go. You
Europe?
think
you sound like a Fox News commercial.
Listen, our country is not going to another country and say, "Well, you can't do this." And I'm sorry.
Well, they could,
You
but
had this
they
XL.
shouldn't.
You had this XL.
No, I'm talking about the
fairy
companies
tale-
that are American companies that have been pretty much used with third-party salesmen to build.
I'm
That
sorry.
pipeline.
Are you talking about these same oil companies that are making record fucking profits?
Yeah, them ones.
Those are U.S. companies.
And they were just
making
they were
record
just starting
profits
to
off
drill
their
here
back.
in the United States.
They weren't starting to drill shit.
I don't know about that. They were capping all sorts of wells.
You look at these permits, right? You go around the entire country. All these big oil companies. Why do they lease the land? So that another smaller company can't come in and drill. They buy up these leases and they sit on them for 20 or 30 years and never do anything. Yank all their permits. Drill what you got. And once you've done that, come get some more. I'm not going to incentivize you to sit on your ass while you rake millions of dollars, billions, on the backs of the American taxpayer, all while other people are going to be like, it's their fault.
I think we should just stop subsidizing oil companies
I
altogether.
I can agree with that.
Well, you should.
We should have
Listen,
done that years ago.
But I
Anyone
don't
who-
believe that the permitting process should have been pulled.
I absolutely do.
I don't.
Why? You're just going to give them new permits for land that they're not going to drill.
If
You
they're
make
not,
a point on
if they're not
Make a
drilling,
How many
getting
permits
to,
are there?
to drill.
How many
I can-
permits are there right now?
I'm not even sure.
I'm not even sure now.
10,000 permits out there to drill oil?
Probably a lot.
A fraction of those are
You have-
actually being drilled.
You have a year to use your permit. If you're not using it, you lose all access to it, and you have to
They only
reapply
do
it
that
over
to
again.
manipulate the supply.
Because that's
And
how
you
they
know
make
why-
the money.
You know why else they do that?
Venezuela, it's still what, like 10 cents a gallon?
Listen, I had this conversation with a friend recently. I went to Canada when I was like 19 years old because 19 years old you could drink, right?
18.
Go to Montreal, you go to all the clubs down there, you can do whatever you want.
Did that.
So
I didn't do that.
I
No,
remember
don't-
going
I've been to
with
Canada.
my
You're missing
friend,
good times, man.
and I remember, and he was older than I was, and I'm like, dude,
Never go during a hockey
gas
game.
is like 89 cents a gallon. He was like, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? It says right on the side. He was like, it's liters. I'm like, what? They do shit in liters? And he's like, yeah, it's not
metric
it's
system.
not a gallon here, it's a liter.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay. And then when we were talking about it the other day, we were talking about gas prices. You're talking about, I'm 45 years old. That was 26 years ago. 26 years ago, at 89 cents a liter, how many liters in a gallon? 3.78 or 3.8? Let's just call it 4.
Sure.
So what's 89 times 4?
A little bit less than 4.
That was gas prices 26 years ago in Canada.
Yeah.
So for us, the only reason we've ever been so low is because we kept subsidizing these companies that were making all of this money
Yep.
while the rest of us fought with each other over oh, that person can't get welfare. Look at them with that EBT card getting steak and lobster at the store. Shut up.
I have been one person as a Republican. I don't care what they buy on their EBT.
I don't either.
If they want to go buy $200 worth of lobster and not eat for the rest of the month, that's on them.
That's on them.
The second we give them money, we have no say.
No say, no
Absolutely
control.
not.
We lose
I agree
all
with you
access
there.
to it.
I agree with you there.
Listen, the pandemic has caused a lot of what's going on, and they're going to blame Democrats, and Democrats are going to blame Republicans. And I will tell you right now, as I sit here as a mayor who is who's registered as a Democrat, both parties suck.
Yep.
Oh, I absolutely agree.
Both of us.
I absolutely agree with you.
The Republicans are Republicans.
The dolphin, the elephants, and the donkeys.
Because everyone's almost everyone at the top. You want to talk about these Nancy Pelosi's and anyone on the federal level? Not everyone. I mean, Angus.
There's a few.
Well, I think Angus King is also.
Angus is all right.
I don't know about that.
I mean,
he's borderline. Right? I'll give you borderline.
I'll tell you who's cool. Like Angus King has this guy that works for him, Scott Wilkinson, and Scott is phenomenal. So I always say, don't always worry about who's sitting there. Like, don't worry about Mills. Worry about who's sitting around Mills.
Right.
I'm not really worried.
Most of the shit happens behind the scenes anyway.
I'm not really worried about LePage. I'm worried about the people that are around LePage. You know what I mean? Like, I don't give a shit about Sleepy Joe. You know who I care about? The people that are around Joe.
Right.
Those are the ones I'm watching.
Right. Those are the
I'm
ones
not
pulling
watching
the
Joe
strings.
Biden. I wasn't watching Trump. All he did was run his yap. I mean,
Yep.
dude completed zilch of what he said he was actually going to do.
Horrible president.
Who?
Trump.
Oh, absolutely horrible.
I don't know about that.
Really? How much is your lumber right now?
What's that have to do with Trump?
Oh,
Trump ain't in office.
They had tariffs.
He
What do
added
you
the
mean? What did
tariffs.
that have to do with Trump?
See, everybody wants to blame whoever's in power, but
they forget the shit that happened.
You forget the idiot that was there before,
Yeah.
who was like, I'm going to build a wall and Mexico's paying for it. Yeah, right. Who's paying for it now? We are.
we
I
took some
always
of the
knew that
money.
we were going to.
Oh,
It was
knew that was
always
gonna
clear it
happen.
was not going to be
We're not
Mexico.
going to do this, and we're not going to. China's going to pay for it. We're going to make them eat the cost. Bullshit.
All they do is just reevaluate their currency, and that's it.
Why was China okay for Trump when he was in business? I'll move my factories overseas. I'll do all
Because
this.
it's cheaper.
Because no minimum wage.
Well, there's lots of reasons, but that does help.
Yeah.
Next one. Let's rattle off some more. I've got a little bit more time and some energy.
Jesus.
So
I'm going to get recalled tomorrow for what I said, but
that's okay. Enjoy it. So someone just said, "Thank you, Joe, for $5 of gas." Someone else said, "Biden." This is Alan. Biden regime just canceled drilling permits in the Gulf and Alaska. Please, the pandemic crushed demand. Oil companies went out of business. Small stripper wells were completely capped, and the workers left the oil industry.
that is not true. Listen.
They should leave the oil industry. Oil is dead. We need to be moving over to green.
Here's the
This is where the yes,
Well,
thank
first,
you, but
yes,
there needs
some
to
sort of
be a
you can't just go from
legitimate
gas
Correct.
to
transition.
to this. There has to be a transition. Let's be honest. People talk about solar.
This is one argument I've always made.
It is you put up 5 acres of solar.
Yep.
It's maybe a 5 megawatt.
Yeah,
20
it's
megawatt.
definitely inefficient.
It's inefficient.
If
I
we-
put a hydro plant, I put hydro in.
Hydro, nuclear, all of these different
You
other
gotta make
versions.
nuclear cleaner, and you gotta
It's
figure out how
already
to get,
really clean now.
You gotta
with
figure
the-
out how to get rid of
yeah,
it.
no,
You
that-
gotta figure out how to dispose of it, and putting it under a mountain is not the way.
I say point at the sun and shoot.
The reason your gas prices are $5 a gallon right now is because these companies are legitimately keeping down supply. Demand is here. Demand is up. They're artificially making it this way so that they can charge you more. At no point can they be producing less oil or less gas, yet making phenomenal profits. Like, so much money that, like, what did Exxon make this year?
Wasn't it like $9 billion or something? It was ridiculous.
Like, for the quarter. I think we
Crazy.
give them $10 billion a year in subsidies. So $10 billion, a far cry from hundreds of millions that you're sending to a Ukraine.
So if we had stopped,
And we do that because we want the cheap oil.
if we stopped 10 years ago subsidizing oil, we'd have a lot better green energy.
If you stopped subsidizing oil 10
have
years
a
ago,
super expensive-
you'd be paying $7, $8 a gallon
You
right now.
have to feel the pain for the free market to get better equipment.
Trump 2024. He's not going to get out of the gate. You got a better chance with Mike Pence.
DeSantis
I was
is
gonna
going
say,
to. I think DeSantis would
go.
probably win the
Oh,
primary.
listen, I'm not here to shit on other politicians because that's not
I
really
am.
what it
That's
is.
our job. But
But you want to talk
I'm still
about
voting for
a
Libertarian
Florida
Party.
governor who, by most accounts, has been okay.
yep, for most of the time.
He's got the same Trump disease. He just can't keep his fucking mouth shut.
But he has less baggage
Yeah.
than Trump does.
That's
It's not that much less.
wow. They just probably haven't put it out yet.
Probably. Realistically, I think you're
DeSantis is not a bad.
I'm not voting
I
for
don't-
him.
I
I'm
don't know
voting for the
what- I don't
Libertarian
know.
Party.
Oh, you libertarians. You know why libertarians are going to keep losing?
Yeah, because there's none of us. And there's not enough of us to get the message.
Because you guys can't even come up with a message.
Correct. Oh, I know. We're
Like,
working,
I so wanted to be like, oh, libertarian, that's just the way to be. It's not. You guys you want no restrictions on nothing. You just want everything to be open like some big happy horseshit utopia where nobody's going to do anything wrong and all these volunteers are going to come out of the woodwork and we're all going to live happily ever after, kumbaya, because you get to be you, I get to be me until I don't agree with you.
No, that's not how it is. Libertarian, I don't care if you're gay. I don't care if you're trans. We don't give a shit
I care.
that you're.
I care if they are. If that's what they want to be, I care.
Well, no, I'm saying
I'm
that we're not going to
empathetic to what people
stop
want.
you.
Not gonna. You're not
Or
gonna
we're
stop
going to have
anyone.
nothing. Right, we're not going to have anything to do
How
to
are you
try
gonna?
to stop you.
How are libertarians going to stop anything when you can't even get yourself started?
I know. It's a shame. We've been
I mean, didn't you
since
guys just have a coup
1973.
at, like your national convention?
It wasn't a coup. It was people at the national level sucked at messaging. So people worked their asses
Listen,
off for 3 years for
people
the better
at the
messaging,
national
and then they won.
People at the national level suck at everything.
Yep,
That's the truth.
we know.
I think
Politics
that
is
doesn't
more-
matter what side of the
all
aisle you're on.
Politics is more important than local.
absolutely.
Local and state. That's
Yep.
where it's important. Because that's where you have the most leverage
Yeah.
to actually talk about your politicians. You complain about Nancy Pelosi. but
I was
she's in
using her as
California.
one
But
example.
she's in California. You
One of
can't do
many.
shit about her. Move to California. Anytime somebody talks to me about a politician that's not in their district,
I say it's none of my business.
none of my business. Move there.
Right. Talk about the main politicians that are actually impacting your life, whether or not it's the Democrats.
We
the
were.
majority,
I
or
will say that we
Republicans,
were
the
on
majority.
a federal subject when we were talking about this.
Yeah,
so,
we were. So,
moving
let's
to the
move-
subject
so
now.
now
But everything's local.
Let's
It's
pull back
state.
and move to the state. Who are you voting for this November?
This November.
Yeah, see
it's a
how tough.
toss-up.
2 years ago, you'd have been like anyone but Mills. Instantly.
I don't know. No.
So
I always.
Who you
that's
voting
that's
for?
one thing I
I'm
always
voting for
do.
LePage.
I stop.
I
and
would have
look.
been
Yeah, I'll
voting
vote
for
for
our
LePage.
libertarian
Yeah, absolutely.
governor
LePage.
nominee, but unfortunately, because Republicans and Democrats like to make the laws shitty, we didn't get enough signatures.
So tell me your knock on Mills. What is it that Mills has done that you don't like?
I don't like how.
I mean, is it the rainy day fund that's stacked to
She's
the
not
gills?
transparent.
I don't like how
No
she,
governor is transparent. Don't use that against
the
her.
difference
No,
is
absolutely will.
The difference is we have LePage talking about how he would be willing to reform the Emergency Powers Act of the governors.
Oh,
That's one good
so
thing.
Let's
I
go.
am not-
Let's go back to how you mentioned that LePage is. I like Paul. I drinks with Paul. I see Paul downtown.
Paul's a great guy.
Sure.
Paul is, by all
Not
intents
someone
and
I would
purposes,
vote for as a president, by the
a
way.
decent person. He is not a bad person. I like Paul. He's a Waterville resident.
I like him. He's a Trumper.
Paul would
No.
do something good and then shoot himself in the foot 2 minutes later. That's what Paul's issue
I mean,
was.
Paul's,
at least that's how I
listen,
felt with it.
Paul may come off as aloof sometimes. He's not dumb.
Oh,
He's an
absolutely not.
intelligent man.
Absolutely not.
But let me tell you what.
Was never implying that.
I currently hold the seat that Paul LePage used to hold.
Yep.
Right?
Of
Yeah.
course.
Neutered the powers of the mayor before he left.
Yeah, and if I
Oh, so now
remember
you-
right, that was one of his biggest regrets.
It was an awful regret. If it wasn't, it should be.
Yep.
Because you now gave, you stripped the power of the one person that the entire city could vote for.
Right.
Well, it's because we gave all the power to the city manager, right?
Yeah.
For the most part. Yeah.
Well, it goes to the
Oh, I
city
was going to
council.
say,
But you
'cause-
don't vote for the city manager.
Well, no,
That's
it's like
You vote.
I think that position should have always stayed with the mayor, and I still say that we should allocate that position back to the mayor.
That position probably
But that was
should have
probably
been in
charter
the
thing,
ci-
right?
it
I
is.
think so.
And I will tell you that our city manager does a decent job.
Oh, I'm not saying he doesn't.
But
I
he's
mean,
not
for the money,
elected
he
by the
better.
people.
Well, that's it. So for the money, they absolutely better. Now, there are some things that I looked at from Paul's administration where I scratch my head and I'm like, what the? I'm like, why? Why would you do that? And now that I'm sitting in that seat, like, I won't tell you who I'm voting for in November.
Makes sense.
I'm not going to tell you who I'm voting for in November because
I already know.
who?
We can't tell anyone.
Oh, yeah, you don't know.
That's because I do know.
No one knows.
No one knows until the voting booth.
No
That's the realistic.
Right, that's what I was just gonna say, too.
That number 2 pencil is going to know, and after that,
Right.
I'm breaking it. I don't think Mills has done a bad job. There are some things I don't agree with her on. However, I think that she's been a pretty solid governor.
So
Listen, I have to look. I have to remove myself from the emotional state of what I feel,
Right.
and I have to look at the facts. How is it that when LePage was in office, we got half the revenue sharing that we get now? Half.
Revenue sharing sucks anyways.
No, it doesn't. We're getting close to $5 million a year in revenue sharing. It's our money. We generated it. The municipalities generated that money.
And when they
what
give
did the
it
state
out,
sell?
and when the towns get it,
What?
the money,
We get the money. We apply it to the budget.
good.
right, it was 3% or 2.5, and now it's 5.
and now it's almost it's like 4 point something now. It's still not. It's still not where it should be. At
I mean,
5.
and it's
that or get rid of revenue sharing.
Right.
Get rid of it altogether.
And let the cities keep their money.
Let you.
thank you.
The cities can't always keep all their money. You
Well,
have
no,
to
but
fund
they
the
can.
government. But why don't I have a municipal tax? I go to other states. The local there's a local tax. I go to other college towns. They got local tax. I go to Canada. They got the state tax. The whatever province tax in the
Providence
towns.
tax,
Why can't the municipalities that make the money keep their money?
I agree with that.
1%. If you gave us 1 to maybe 2% of the money that we generate here, ooh, what we could do. The things Waterville could do.
It would make up for that other 33%.
What are 33%?
The the tax
The
exempt
non-tax,
part
the
of the
non-tax
property.
Yes, but you also have to look at that a lot of nonprofits to create a ton of services.
I'm
in
not
this
saying
area.
they don't. I'm just saying that's
we
funding
otherwise
that's
won't
not
fund.
there.
Well, that's funding that we don't have to fund.
Yes and no.
I don't have to pay for that.
Yes, you do.
Why?
You have to pay if an ambulance has to go to that church.
So what? I have to pay that anyway.
It's still stuff coming out of.
Are you
out of
saying
the-
that you
out
want
of
to
the-
tax churches?
No,
I am.
mega church.
No,
maybe.
no.
I am saying I want
Are
to
you
tax
saying that
churches.
you want to tax churches?
Not. No, not churches. No.
Why?
But why? You
Not
can't
churches.
pick and choose nonprofits.
No, of course you can. That's the Republican way.
Tax them all or tax none of them. Tax churches.
Well, then tax them.
I am all for taxing churches.
Perfect.
Tax 'em.
All 3 of them on agreement.
Why wouldn't you tax them?
I was trying to leave the religious part out, but tax
You
them.
can't.
No, you can't. You can't. You
That's
can't.
why I tell people. That's when we talk.
Separation of church and state.
But when we go back to these morality issues, like abortion and all that, it
Yeah.
usually stems from Christian beliefs.
Right.
Almost
Wow.
always.
Yeah.
We are a fairly large Judeo-Christian society.
No, we are not.
Not anymore.
Not anymore, but we used to be.
We started that way
Yes.
as a country. But
Yeah.
then people
And
got
when
to
we
make
started
up their
that way.
own
We still had
minds.
slavery. Women couldn't vote.
Vote.
I
No,
mean,
you're
come
right,
on.
you're right.
Black people were property.
It makes no that stuff makes no sense when it comes to legislation. Don't legislate morality.
Right.
Don't legislate from the pew. I don't care what your pastor has to say. He's your pastor. Let him say it to you. But tax the shit out of that church. Absolutely. I don't care. I don't care who hears it. I don't care if it hurts me in the future. Absolutely tax them all. If I have to pay it, you should have to pay it. Why is your money protected? Not only is it, I gave it to you. What do you guys tithe? 10% or whatever it
Yeah.
is from your money?
What's supposed to be.
So wait a minute. You get to tithe it, it's tax free. They get to keep it, it's tax free.
Yeah. I still have to pay taxes.
Let me show you how to launder money and protect
the government.
I will let you launder money and protect pedophiles. That's exactly how you do it.
Oh, well, which church you talking about?
Any of them.
Just about any church.
Oh.
And not all churches. We have
good churches.
We have
Yeah,
great
we do
churches,
have a
and
lot of
that's
great
not all the
churches.
time. But people, absolutely, that's where they hide. I mean, think of what people were doing in the 70s and 80s that is just coming out to light now.
Right. They can hide under their religious beliefs. Not
No.
many, not most, but
And
some.
and hide under your religious beliefs for you.
Right.
That is not my religious belief, nor should you have the authority to be able to tell me to do so. Period.
And that also brings into talking politics in church. It can also help you lose your nonprofit status.
Well, and they do all the time, and they don't
know.
lose their
I don't get
nonprofit
it.
status
They're not
because nobody wants to go after them.
I know. It's because they vilify. Because everyone from all sides of the aisle, they all have the churches.
Listen,
Republicans, Democrats,
if you're a person
local, state.
that likes religion and you like the structure and you believe in a God, I'm happy for you.
Yeah,
Like
me too.
I
Well,
genuinely
what's
want
it
you.
saying? There's a difference between being religious and
Faith.
and faith. That's what it is.
So have all the faith that you want.
Absolutely.
I just don't want to follow your faith
I
by
know.
the rules.
Because I'm faithful to something else.
Right.
And I believe that the universe is just going to work it out someday. Whatever. You manifest this shit, you throw it out there, that it is what it is.
Yep. Works itself out in the long run.
But I don't push that onto anyone else. Like, there is not a single decision that you can point to since I have been in office where you can be like, that was because he was that was because of this, or that was no, you have to go back and be like, oh, he really had a good argument for that. That makes sense. Or it didn't.
That's the thing, is a lot of people don't really show their arguments. Let's get financial literacy in schools as a high school graduation requirement. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Some sort of literacy.
If you want to
in
teach my
budgets.
kids how to balance a checkbook, I've already done it at home. If you're relying on a school to do the basics that you're supposed to be doing for your children, then you get what you deserve.
But a lot
And
of
they're
people
going to get
are.
what they don't deserve.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what's got to be fixed.
What?
The kids
you
don't
can't-
deserve
Sorry,
to have
Zach.
that.
I'm not voting for Poliquin. I can't support Bruce Poliquin.
There's no way.
Not in a million years.
No.
Never.
Do you remember the first time we met him, or that time we met him in Oakland?
Yeah.
Glad I'm not in CD2.
I mean, he's a nice guy from everything I've seen. I just can't. I can't do it.
So let's go back to the state, because you guys are going to
state.
go. Why is it Republicans keep going back to the well? Like, I'm watching these people. They're like, oh, Trump 2024. Why do you keep going back to the well?
Vote red to save America.
Vote red to save nothing. Dude, Red are the biggest welfare whores. Look at the states that take welfare. Red states.
And the corporations that get welfare are usually
They're
because
red
of Republicans.
I'm
Bring up a map. Show them. It only takes a couple minutes to Google people. But anyway, back to the state, because I'm going to get off track, and we've been at this for a while.
We have.
And I'm getting more loud because it's hot in here.
It is.
yeah, it is warm.
And I get passionate. So
Oh, everyone's passionate.
Mills hasn't done an awful job. I know people will complain, people will say whatever.
So my issue with Mills is that it's not. It's the people that are also under her, and that the governor gets to pick to run different things like Department of Education and things like that.
Well, you elected him to do so.
Well,
You elected her-
Mills.
Yeah, we
Right,
elected
which
him to do so.
So I take into
What, I'm
account.
going to elect you to be governor and I'm going to appoint all the people that I want you to have? No.
No.
You pick your cabinet. You pick your people. You make it happen.
Right, I'm okay with that, which is why I'm also okay with voting for like LePage. I'm not going to vote for LePage just because I'm voting for LePage. Like for instance, Trump. I didn't vote for Trump, but some of the things I liked about him is some of the people that he put in office, like Neil Gorsuch. I like him as a Supreme Court pick. He's more libertarian than anyone else that he put in.
How did he vote this past week?
He voted for states' rights, essentially.
What state right? Tell me that the 14th Amendment had anything to do. Tell me that abortion had anything to do with states' rights.
It sent it back to the states. It left
The state-
So it
so
removed
they-
your federal constitutionally protected right that under the Constitution you didn't have as before 1973. You didn't have that before then. Actually, abortion was illegal in most states.
Yeah.
As it is in most countries.
No,
So,
it's not. Not most countries.
In a lot of countries, abortion's illegal. But I'm telling you,
Can you tell me what
wasn't-
those countries are, and can you explain to me if those countries are religious in nature?
They probably are, but they also have big safety nets.
Religious in nature.
Yeah.
It's about morality.
I agree,
No,
which is why I'm
no.
not a religious person.
The federal government has done nothing but mess things up. They have
They
rules.
always mess
The
things up.
government always messes it up.
The federal,
they don't.
the
More
state-
government, more problems.
What are you going to do without them?
All right, so this is the
Still
this
be
is
up
the
Schitt's Creek's
welfare map. So I'll post this when I'm done too.
What is it?
This is most welfare by state.
Who takes the most?
Most welfare, New Mexico.
Which is actually a blue state.
It is.
But that's because they have all the
Least
immigrants.
welfare, North Carolina. I think that's
That's a purple state.
okay. Well, so it's both.
They split their
it's
votes?
blue. It's,
No,
no,
but
that's
they're
not what that
Okay,
means.
I gotcha.
It means bounce.
So let's keep going down the list.
So the top 10 states with the most welfare is New Mexico, blue state. West Virginia, I believe
Red
that's
state.
a red state. Louisiana, red,
Red state. Mississippi, red state. Alabama, red state.
Oklahoma,
red state.
Illinois, blue state.
Yes.
Rhode Island, blue state. Pennsylvania, I'm guessing blue state.
Nope, red state right now.
And Oregon is a blue state.
It's about even.
So, I mean,
Look at the money sent in.
right. So how many per thousand? So 100,000. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So like the first, almost first, the top 6 of them, 5 of them are red states.
Just so we're clear.
But
Now,
there are
I can pull up a study that'll tell me anything I want.
right. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
let's be
what I
honest.
was just about to
It's
say.
2022, but that's the argument that Republicans use all the time.
right.
So again, somebody explain to me how Mills has done a bad job when you're all about to get $850 checks.
So she did that also with the help of the Republicans. It certainly the Democrats wanted 500 and it'd be capped.
So explain to me something. How can Republicans in one breath be like, we're spending too much money, we're spending too much money, we're spending too much money, we
Here,
need a
$50
cut.
back.
Here's $850.
Do you want to know the secret?
Yeah. Because
Called make them look bad in the election.
no, it's called that they're disingenuous fucks. Literally.
So most of the Republicans I know that I've talked to, they voted, the people that voted for it because they don't like taxes. They think of it, it's a tax cut. You're getting...
It's a tax rebate.
Yes. And most of the people didn't even pay that much into taxes. So you're actually getting more of it
Yeah.
back than you paid in.
And what's the rainy day fund still look like?
I don't know.
Still higher than it was when LePage left office.
Probably is.
Look at the other states in the nation and how they've done. Do you think that Maine has fared worse than the other states?
Worse? No, but it
No.
is the 4th in the highest tax bracket.
Absolutely is.
So that also helps in regards to why we have so much money in things like the rainy day fund, because we have such high taxes in all of these different areas. Now, the areas themselves aren't particularly high. It's when you add them all up that it makes the 4th highest tax. And that was by what, Wallet Hub, I believe?
I think so.
Well, that's because we only have 1.3 million people.
Right.
Somebody has to pay. There's less people to spread it out to.
Right.
So, of course, we're always going to look like we're higher taxed. There's less of us.
Right.
But guess what? Less of us, we still need the resources.
Yeah, we should.
Like, do you think it
Right.
costs
So
more to
you
take
said
out...
that we have a really big rainy day fund. Would
do.
you support lowering the income tax, having less of a rainy day fund, but having less money paid in so that more people can keep their money? Lowering income taxes.
No.
50% of our budget revenue is taken in by income taxes.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't support lowering that?
No.
Why? Why do you need such a high rainy day fund? I mean, it helps to a certain extent to get good bond ratings. I get that.
Which, in the turn, saves us money.
Yes. So keep what you need for the bond rate. It's not like there's a sliding scale that says if you add an additional $10,000 in income tax, you're going to have a 4% higher bond rate.
How much do you have in savings?
How much do I have personally in savings?
Not a number. Percentage-wise, of your income, how much do you put in savings as a reserve?
As a reserve, I would say about 10%.
What if I told you the state has about 15%?
I'm sure it does.
What's wrong with that then?
Nothing's wrong with it. I just want.
Why do you want it to be less?
I don't want less.
I want to keep more of my money.
Right. I want
throughout the
less.
year.
I don't care how much percentage of it is saved in the rainy day fund. I care the dollar figure or the percentage that they're taking out. Because so I know personally a lot of people that have actually moved out of the state into lower income tax states. Now,
I
granted,
know plenty that have moved here from no income states.
right. And I granted, I know people.
You know how many Floridians we've gotten?
Yes, I know some people will. Well, this is
Quite a
there's
few.
snowflakes also, snowbirds. No, snowflakes.
Snowflakes. Oh, jeez.
You ain't gonna
I meant snowbirds.
We're gonna get banned.
banned off Facebook.
Mills
I'm
is
not.
flooding the zone with capital in a time of supply issues, meaning inflation will soar again. The rainy day fund was funded by federal bailouts. Yes, Maine is bottom
COVID
5
money.
post-pandemic recovery. Holy moly, I kind of like the mayor, but there are facts.
No, there are facts. And
Let's get rid of the state income tax.
No, you can't get rid of the state income tax.
You can if you
I'm for
replace
abolishing
it
it.
or lower whatever money.
What are you
you're
replacing
spending.
it with? What do you want to be,
I'm
New
okay with
Hampshire?
the consumption-based tax. I don't like
I'm okay
those,
with a
but
flat tax. I don't want anyone to get refunds. I want us all to pay 15 to 20% in taxes.
I'm okay with that.
And then
too.
the
I don't
state,
like
federal
taxes,
government,
but-
they all better figure out how to use that money.
Yep.
Why is it? Because you ain't getting any more. But that means that there's no returns, and everyone pays exactly the same. If you're
percentage. The same percentage.
Same percentage.
Yep.
And there ain't no weird write-offs.
No write-offs. Take all
Zero.
write-offs at the state and federal level.
Zero write-offs.
Yep.
And then you do that.
Yeah. I'm okay
That
with
makes sense. You want a tax system that's fair. You tax everyone
Who is it?
exactly
I
the
think
same.
Herman Cain had
it say?
that. Yes, he loves New Hampshire. Oh, that's Joni.
Who loves New Hampshire?
I do. She's saying I love New Hampshire.
Yeah, Joni, he loves New Hampshire. And here's a fact. Joni, I bet your house in Oakland is probably around $2,000 to $2,500 a year in taxes.
Probably thereabouts.
That same house in New Hampshire is about $7,000 or $8,000.
I know. No.
Guaranteed.
I've already looked it up. It's about $2,500.
No, it's not. Not for the same house.
Yeah, same house.
No,
Same
it can't
house
be.
with the same valuation.
It is not. It is absolutely
The
not.
property taxes in New Hampshire aren't significant. They're higher, but they're not that much higher.
Higher.
I've lived there. I know.
I know people.
I
that
see
live there,
people-
and I've seen their statements.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Their taxes have always been higher. Their property taxes
Yes.
are always higher.
Yes.
because they have
not
no income
saying
tax.
It's a substantial. It's not substantially
So-
higher. It is higher, and there are still some sales tax in certain aspects.
And it's
like
funny that
restaurants
rich
and
people
things
are
like that.
used. A lot of rich people complain about income tax,
I'm not rich,
which is odd. And here's why: because rich people don't pay income tax.
well, right.
No, listen. If you make
Not paying much income
if
tax.
you make enough money,
You hide your money.
it appears that you have no money.
Right.
Like, let's be honest, it appears that you have zero for money. And that's what they do. They take their asset, they borrow
They
against
leverage
that asset,
Right.
and then they pay it back. They never pay taxes on that money.
Because they're always moving it.
Right.
They're always moving the value of the asset
To
into
some-
other assets.
And as long as you don't sell the asset,
then you don't have to pay capital gains.
then you don't have to pay the taxes.
Right.
That's what it goes back to the same thing. You all got that money for COVID relief, and some of you went and spent it at Walmart. Some of you went and invested it. The Walmart stock went up because you were buying in store, and it went up because somebody invested in the company. Who made out? The rich guy who now doesn't have to pay taxes because it looks like he didn't make any. So not only did you make the Walton family richer,
I think only one of the childs is on the board now.
whatever.
I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Listen, that family's got generational.
Oh, I
wealth.
know.
Yeah.
I just want to try to be transparent
So
about everything.
you look at these people. Look at CEOs who are making 350 times the amount of money that their lowest paid employee makes, and he gets it all in stock options and shit, so he doesn't have to pay income tax.
So this is what Alan said.
Okay.
You probably agree with some of them. 90% of the federal taxes is paid by the top 20%. How about we close capital gains loopholes? How about we stop hedge funds from raping our financial system? The entire check on capitalism is the risk, but Democrats and Republicans have removed risk from banks and hedge funds. Bailouts in
Right.
08 and 09 told these pigs they can ignore risk.
I don't disagree. That just goes back to what I'm saying, Alan. We have allowed corporations to divide us. Everybody's talking about politicians. Who puts these politicians in office? Corporations.
But at the end of the
Have a
day,
lot of the poll.
who's the one that's voting?
So, Alan, here's one that you may like. When I ran for this seat, everyone said I was going to spend $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 to run for this seat.
Which is actually pretty low because most reps
Do you know how many donations I took to run for my seat? How many? How many people do you think I took money from to run for my seat?
None.
0.
I knew the answer.
Do you know how much? Do you know how much money it cost me to run for the mayor's seat?
I don't know.
I think it was
At least $20 because I made shirts
$200,
for you.
$200 or $300.
It was like $800.
I thought you said it was like.
I
$300
leveraged
last
the
time.
power of the internet.
Yep.
I didn't distribute paperwork. I just gave people a website to go to. I talked to people. I didn't knock on a lot of doors. It was COVID.
You held debates.
So I held debates, but I talked to people in big swaths. So while everybody else was trying to talk to 1 or 2 candidates, I was talking to 20 or 30 candidates at a time. 20 or 30 constituents.
Constituents.
So I worked smarter, not harder. And I had only 100 signs. And I put like 50 of them out on like these prominent properties and corners and stuff.
Well, that's usually.
And then I just moved the other 50 around. So it looked like I had hundreds upon hundreds of signs, but I only had 100 of them.
Look at that, Phil. You got duped.
Well, Phil had signs, just the little ones.
The iPad signs.
Oh man, I was still seeing those like 2 months after the election. They were everywhere.
He didn't even bother
So we debated and we accomplished nothing because that's sort of
Well, that's how debate works.
Yeah.
But we had a good chat.
But I will.
It got heated, but you can respectfully disagree.
That's it. I can respect people's opinions. Where I can't respect, I will not respect you if you are racist. You're probably going to catch my hands. I mean, they're old, but they still work, right? You come at me